My friend invited her family and friends to my home, so I started ignoring her phone calls. AITA. So picture this. I'm sitting at home, just finished a long day, and my phone starts blowing up with notifications. I see my friend's name pop up over and over again. I'm like, what's going on? Turns out, she invited a bunch of people over to my place without even asking me first. I mean, I was legit fuming. Did I overreact by ignoring her calls after that? Let's dive into this wild ride. Alright, let me set the stage for you. I've got this close friend, let's call her Sarah. We've been tight for years. Like, she's the kind of friend you tell everything to. Secrets, laughs, even the really tough stuff. She was always the person I could count on, no matter what. We'd had our ups and downs, like any friends do, but nothing major. So, imagine my shock when one day, completely out of the blue, she decides to throw a little get-together at my house. And the kicker, she didn't even ask me first. Just boom, invites a whole bunch of people over like it's no big deal. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not the type of person who hates having people over. I love a good hangout, but this was different. I was caught completely off guard. I'd had a long day, was already exhausted, and the last thing I wanted was to play host to a group of people when I wasn't even mentally or physically prepared for it. Plus, it's my space, you know? It's my home, my sanctuary. Who invites people over without asking the host first? At that moment, a mix of emotions hit me all at once. I felt betrayed, disrespected, and honestly, a little blindsided. It wasn't just about the gathering itself. It was about Sarah, assuming it was okay to make a decision about my space without even checking with me. That was the part that hurt the most. It made me question everything. Had I given her the wrong impression? Had I been too easygoing in the past, making her think this kind of thing was acceptable? I didn't know what to think. So there I am, sitting on my couch, staring at my phone as the notifications keep rolling in. Messages from people asking, "Hey, what time should we come over? Or do you need me to bring anything?" And I'm just sitting there thinking, I didn't even know this was happening. I felt a pit in my stomach. How could Sarah, someone who knew me so well, think this was okay? I tried to stay calm at first, but the more I thought about it, the more upset I got. It wasn't like this was a casual misunderstanding. This felt like a major breach of trust. So instead of replying to any of the messages or answering Sarah's calls, I just ignored them. I needed time to think, to process what had just happened. I knew that if I responded in the heat of the moment, I'd probably say something I'd regret later. The next day, I woke up still feeling uneasy. I hadn't heard from Sarah since the night before, which wasn't surprising since I'd been avoiding her calls. But part of me hoped she'd realize how out of line she'd been and reach out with an apology. That didn't happen. Instead, the silence between us stretched on, and with each passing day, my frustration grew. I started replaying all of our past conversations in my head, trying to pinpoint if there had been any signs that this might happen. Had there been moments where I'd let her cross boundaries without speaking up? Had I been too passive in our friendship? I decided to talk to a couple of our mutual friends about it. We agreed to meet up and talk things through in person. I'll be honest, the days leading up to that conversation were tough. I kept going back and forth in my mind, wondering if I was ready to forgive her. Part of me wanted to move past it, but another part of me was still really hurt. Could our friendship go back to the way it was? Or would things always feel different from now on? The day of our meetup finally came, and I remember feeling a mix of anxiety and relief. I knew we needed to talk, but I was also nervous about how it would go. When we sat down, the tension was thick. Neither of us knew how to start, so I just took a deep breath and went for it. I laid it all out, how her actions had hurt me, how disrespected I felt, and how hard it was for me to trust her after something like that. As I spoke, I could see the realization wash over her face. I don't think she fully understood how big of a deal this was for me until that moment. And as much as I was angry and hurt, seeing her genuinely upset made me realize something too. She hadn't done this to hurt me on purpose. It was a mistake, a thoughtless one, but still a mistake. By the end of the conversation, we were both in tears. It was an emotional moment for both of us, but it felt necessary. We needed to get everything out in the open, even if it was painful. And as hard as it was, I'm glad we did it. I realized that I had been holding on to a lot of resentment, not just from this incident, but from little things that had built up over time. This was the moment where I finally let it all go. After our talk, things were awkward for a little while. I mean, how could they not be? We had just gone through a pretty intense emotional experience, and it wasn't something we could just brush off and forget about. But slowly, we started to rebuild our friendship. It wasn't easy. There were still moments where I felt a bit guarded, unsure if I could fully trust her again. But over time, things began to heal. We had a lot of conversations after that about boundaries and communication. It was clear that we both had some work to do in terms of being honest with each other about our needs and expectations. I realized that I needed to be more vocal when something bothered me, instead of letting it fester. And she understood that she needed to be more considerate and mindful of my space and my feelings. It wasn't a quick fix, but gradually we found our way back to each other. Our friendship wasn't exactly the same as it was before, but in some ways it was better. We had a deeper understanding of each other now, and we both knew how important it was to communicate openly and honestly. We also set some ground rules: no more surprises at my place without asking first, and always check in with each other before making big decisions that could affect the other person. Looking back on the whole situation, I learned a lot. It wasn't just about setting boundaries with Sarah. It was about setting boundaries in all of my relationships. I realized that it's okay to stand up for yourself and say when something isn't okay. It doesn't make you a bad friend or a difficult person. It just means you're taking care of yourself. I also learned the importance of forgiveness. It took me a while to fully forgive Sarah, but once I did, I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. Holding on to that anger wasn't doing me any good. It was just keeping me stuck in a place of hurt. Forgiving her didn't mean forgetting what had happened, but it meant that I was choosing to move forward instead of holding on to the past. So here I am now, months later, in a better place. My friendship with Sarah is still evolving, but it's stronger in some ways because we've been through this together. And I'm stronger too. I've learned how to speak up for myself, how to set boundaries, and how to forgive when someone makes a mistake. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had a similar experience where a friend crossed a boundary? How did you handle it? What did you learn from it? Drop your stories in the comments below. Let's keep the conversation going and learn from each other. And if you enjoyed this video and want to hear more about my relationship adventures, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.